Did you not eat while handling my clean? Could you not come in when I'm in the middle of my brunch? Oops, too late.
Sharp wit.
Computer! What's inside a computer? No one really knows.
Biting satire.
You can just move along and have a nice day, okay?
Okay, I'm not required to have a nice day, officer.
And original.
Let's go, let's go, let's go!
Welcome to Cordkillers. Our mission to report the intel from the front lines of the cord-cutting revolution so that you can take control and watch what you want, when you want, where you want, on whatever device you want. I'm Tom Merritt.
Hello, beautiful people. I'm Brian Brushwood. We're Tom and Brian. We're going to call the show from now on with Tom and Brian because we want to follow in the footsteps of comedy legends Bob Odenkirk and David Cross, who, of course, are coming to Netflix as sooner than I dare to hope. November 14th, it looks like? Just 3 weeks away. We're going to get essentially new episodes of Mr. Show. Of course, they're not going to call it Mr. Show.
Watching that trailer, I was like, wait, are these the old episodes of Mr. Show? No, I guess they look older. These must be, like, it was hard to tell.
What's great is they put it there, like, on a new original show, and as they say it, the text shows quotes around the words new and original. New original show series. Man, I couldn't be more excited about it, unless you were to tell me that we had one of our all-time favorite guests on this episode.
Hey, Brian, guess what?
What?
We have one of our all-time favorite guests on this show from HockeyBuzz.com. Welcome, Eck.
You're way too kind. That's so nice. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, no, by the way, after big timing us last week because he had to go wine and dine some important clientele, but we appreciate it. We're glad to have you this week.
Of course. You know, Tom and Brian means, if you combine it, it's trying.
Trying!
Just saying.
That's all we're doing every week. We're just trying.
It's our new show. It's Trying with A for Efforts, featuring Brian and Tom.
Let's try and get right on into our primary target because it's X bringing it to us today.
Yeah, dude, this is a weird one, isn't it?
Yeah, so one of the reasons we love having Eck on, but one of the reasons we wanted to have him on as in particular is to talk about the state of cord cutting in sports because it's a fast-moving system right now. They're trying to get rid of blackouts. The leagues are trying to deliver video digitally to you, but then the networks are trying to hold on to their rights. But then the networks are saying, well, you can have some of the championships on one channel, but not on a mobile device, and it's all confusing. And best of all, Eck, you have a conspiracy theory for us on this.
I do. Put on your tinfoil hats, ladies and gentlemen, because here we go. I don't know how many out there play what's called DraftKings or FanDuel, but you've probably seen the ads because they are.
If you have watched any sports at all recently, you have seen the ads more than once.
Dude, and it's bleeding all over new media as well. I listened to the Earwolf production of the Cracked podcast, and like every third episode, you got what traditionally is not a very sportsy podcast talking about how you can become a millionaire with DraftKings.
I like FanDuel because I could make money every week, even though I lose my shirt.
Oh yeah. Well, this is cracked for hockey or sports fans in general. And I tried it this week just because I was writing a story on it. I felt like I had to try it, and it is insane. The concept of it is, and how I will tie this into cord killing. But the concept of this is that there is a daily fantasy game going on. So you can basically, instead of just a lot of people who have fantasy sports, pick a team in the beginning of the year with a bunch of friends over beer and go the entire season and just, play for $20, $50, whatever. This is a daily thing where you can play for millions of dollars, and every day it changes. So that's they're getting away with it because it's not gambling, they're saying. It's a skill contest that, picking players is a skill.
And just to put it in context, I would say that legally, what you've described so far is no different than there being a $100,000 cash purse for a nationwide Hearthstone tournament. You play your digital card game. Yes, there's going to be some luck of the draw. You might get the good cards, you might get the bad cards, but in general, those with the highest skill will rise to the top, and one person will be crowned champion.
Yeah, I mean, I have a skill at being able to identify which 3 horses will be the first 3 horses in a race, right? It's just a skill.
Right, that's a skill. Like if there was a DraftKings for tech news, Tom, you would really be good at it. Because you do it all the time, right? You sit there and you should be good at it. And that because you've developed a skill, you've researched this all your life. Well, recently, the state of Nevada, which is known for its love of gambling, came out and said that this is illegal.
Now, is that because is that a protectionist move? Is that because they feel like this is a way for them to keep their whale going without screwing anything up?
To a degree, yes, but mainly what they're saying is this is gambling. And if it's gambling, then yeah, you're right. You're probably right, Brian. That we want a piece of it, right? We want a.
They're
part
saying
of
you have to have a license, right? Which is
right,
exactly
license,
what Brian's
which
saying.
means they want a piece of it, which is all kind of connected together. That would be one thing. But that's kind of not. It maybe doable, right? The thing is, over the last year, silently in the background, FanDuel and DraftKings have been signing partnerships with NFL, NHL, and Major League Baseball teams. Like individual teams have been signing up as the official, and it's been a race. It's been like an arms race. Like one has 7 NHL teams, one has 8 NFL teams. The players' associations of the NFL and Major League Baseball have agreed to. So we're talking about serious, now gambling, quote unquote, that is also connected directly to a team. And you would think in the past that this would have been completely absurd, right? I mean, we all know why Pete Rose isn't in the Hall of Fame, right? So this feels absurd, So I started asking, why are they doing this? Why are they teaming up with that? Well, for one, it's all the money, right? We're seeing all the advertising, and that's probably for 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6, by the way. But it is all for the money, right? And why do they want this money? Well, my theory is this: they want badly, and I've been chasing this for about a year, to get away from networks. Sports, right now the NFL signs a big deal with NBC, CBS, so-and-so. They would love to run the whole show. They don't want a middleman. They want NFL.com to be where you have to go to see every NFL game. Major League Baseball wants the same thing, right? And I think they saw FanDuel and DraftKings with so much money as being their ticket to getting away from having to sign, multi-million-dollar deals with other companies and share the profits.
Well, and this also it would make sense for FanDuel and for DraftKings. Let's say they are in a position of let's say online poker was 10 years ago, where it's like you knew the hammer had a chance to come down. Online poker wasn't very highly diversified when the hammer came down on them. So all they did was they moved things offshore. They had to change everything to PokerStars.net instead of .com, and then they had to do this weird funneling you to play for fun for free, but then also you could gamble in these offshore accounts. This seems like a much safer way to take what is very real cash to them right now during this white hot electricity before there's been a decision come down on them, and at least no matter what happens, they have the asset of these hopefully exclusive deals with various sports institutions.
Yeah, but it would have been absurd in just a few years ago to think it, because sports teams and leagues in general have tried to stay away from gambling or any connection to it, even though we all know that it's what runs the NFL. Football is football. People will watch the Cardinals versus the Rams, no offense, Tom, in the middle of the day
Wow,
on 4
both
o'clock in the afternoon.
Got it. Nice.
They'll watch that in the middle of the afternoon at 4 o'clock in the afternoon if you're living in Pittsburgh. Why? Because you got some kind of play on the game. You got some kind of action going. Or else, this is why NFL is so usually popular. It's the perfect gambling game.
But there's distance, right? Yeah. The NFL is saying we get our money from the advertisements that fuel the broadcasters that pay us the rights, and we get money from ticket holders and merchandise sales. But the gambling just fuels people consuming that side of things. We're not directly involved in the gambling. Whereas what you're saying is they're getting money from what is essentially by many considered gambling because they're able to tell themselves when they go to sleep every night, well, fantasy sports isn't really gambling, even though Nevada says, we think it is, so you need a license.
I mean, okay, so explain to me why this is any different from Hearthstone, giving out cash prizes, because if it's
because you're playing Hearthstone with a deck of cards, but this is betting.
Yes.
No,
no,
but that's
free will. That
you're not in control
of, right?
So this would be like putting money on other Hearthstone players.
Well, hold on. As I understand it, the entire purpose of fantasy sports is that you're able to move the needle after the game starts. You're able to trade players. You're able to make decisions. That's not the case on here. It's just flat out you're making a bet of who's going to perform the best and win. All right, that's gambling.
It's gambling, and also the deck of cards doesn't have the ability to be swayed by money to bring up an ace or a 10 or a king. I mean, here we're talking about sports athletes, people who are now involved in something that other people are gambling on. Like, I'll give you an example. I sit in the press box in the Philadelphia for hockey games, and 2 seats down from me is a guy who every day charts the hits. Basically, a hit in the NHL is very obscure. If two players collide, is that a hit? If someone steals the puck, is that a hit? Regardless, this guy, we'll call him Tom or Tryon, he's down there and he is charting hits. Now those hits that he's charting, and I've known him forever, and I said, that's a hit. No, it's not a hit. Those hits are actually part of how FanDuel and DraftKings are giving away money.
I guess I don't. What I don't understand is how do they position themselves as fantasy sports games if you don't do any of the things that you do in fantasy sports, like trade players and have an active role?
You do those things in fantasy sports.
Right,
it's all the same thing.
But fantasy sports, the thing is this: fantasy sports is over an entire year. So if you draft a team in the beginning of the year, you can then trade players from game to game to game, and then at the end of the year, your combination of points will count. This is a one-night deal. So these games are one night. So you pick a team for this night, and then if that team wins, fine. That team loses, fine. The next night you pick a brand new team. So it's not about trading. You get a brand new team every day.
Man, but I'd still say that does sound like a game of skill.
Okay, here I think I've got the answer for you. With Hearthstone, you play a card, and that card's success is based on either math or a random number generator, right?
Yeah.
In fantasy sports, you play a card, and that card's success is based on the actual real-world efforts of a human that you aren't related to, as evaluated by another human who is charting what they did.
So you're saying that the opportunity for graft at multiple levels is a big influencing factor on this.
And
yeah, because Hearthstone is just a game you're playing. With fantasy sports, you are using real-world efforts to inform what you're saying. You're betting that Brian Brushwood, who's going out to play quarterback, will complete 6 passes, or at least complete more passes than the quarterback that the other guy you're playing against chose.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It seems like whatever. Don't get me started on all the things that should be legal and not a problem. But
there's nothing. I mean, forget about legality of gambling. It's all about the appearance of impropriety with these sports leagues saying, like, hold on a minute, we have never mixed the idea that we could fix a game. Right? We've tried to stay very far away from it. That's why Pete Rose isn't in the Hall of Fame. That's why there was the Black Sox scandal in the early 1900s because of that idea. And here's where we tie it back into cord cutting, because I know a bunch of you are like, what the hell does this have to do with cord cutting?
I got it. Go ahead.
The pot of money that is needed to overcome the incumbent licensing agreements in order to bring you sports directly, digitally over the internet is so much that it requires sports companies to basically affiliate themselves with folks whose monetary success relies on the very players that the sports league employs and evaluates. There's a potential for a huge conflict of interest there.
There is. And the final tie into cord killing, because I know this is the thing. In the past, when I've covered this, and I've covered sports for a while, sports franchises and leagues were terrified of that appearance of impropriety, Tom. They were afraid of that. Why? Because they were afraid that CBS would pull out, NBC would pull out, and ABC would pull out.
Oh, wow. So what you're suggesting, or if I'm picking this up, is that absent that threat, when all of a sudden, let's say all the major networks did pull out and they still had distribution and they were still the #1 sport that everybody wanted to watch in America and worldwide, do they suddenly soften their stance on gambling in general?
That's what we'll find out, right? And what we'll find out is if the major networks, who still are driven by a lot of people who don't like this kind of stuff, may actually pull out. And if they do pull out, I think that's what the leagues would like, because on a certain level, they would rather run the whole show, like I said before. And if they ran the whole show, I think streaming would be a lot better for all of us. Because, as we know, it's the difference between a network and I think if all they had was streaming, then of course streaming is going to be really good. Or if they had their networks on TV but they still have streaming, it's going to be very good for sports fans. At the end of the day, what's interesting is how little they're worried about this, because this is something that really would have bothered them a ton, like Pete Rose and all the stuff we've talked about before. These were big stories, years ago, and now the fact that a team can partner with a gambling site and that gambling site can actually have people gamble on the team it's partnered with is very, very conflict of interest.
I agree with that, but it seems like along with that comes I don't know, a sterilizing effect of sunlight, of there being like so much coverage that everything has to be above board. You know, in a world, you know, where when we were kids, there were 3 networks and they literally shaped the narrative of our perception of the entire world. And nowadays you don't have that. I actually think that nowadays among millennials, I don't think many millennials think that there's anything inherently wrong with gambling. I think what they think that there's something wrong with is obfuscation and corruption. And if there's a way to shine enough sunshine on it, I feel like we could bring that out into the daylight and have it be okay for everyone. But maybe I'm wrong on that.
Well, if the leagues are in charge of everything, there's less opportunity for sunshine. For instance, Eck, you might be banned from shooting video while you're covering your sport.
Oh, geez.
Precisely, and the fact is, last year, if you remember, a lot of sports went and you couldn't meerkat or periscope during the game, which I kind of got because you're broadcasting live. But one thing we do in scrums and locker rooms after games is often go up to a player, and these days what you'll see is a bunch of people holding their phone up and interviewing the player, right? And we're videotaping it, and sometimes we put that videotape up online. Sometimes it's just for reference to write stories with. We got a letter during the first preseason game this year in the press box that was no longer allowed. You were no longer allowed to videotape or record players in the locker room, which is a big deal, and again is a chance for the rights holders and the networks to control everything. And the teams are being funny about it. Some of them are like, oh, we're not gonna really enforce it unless you get in trouble, that kind of thing. And other teams are really enforcing it. So yeah, it's. This caused a huge chaos in my world because in journalism, technically a lot of these guys who even work for major newspapers they're part of their job is getting video. Is this now they can't.
Going to be the kind of thing where it's officially not allowed, but everyone does it anyway? I mean, because it seems like this can't stand. I mean, unfortunately, that was the trick of the KGB, right? Was just make everything illegal, and yet have society work where everybody knows they could be grabbed for something at any time, and then whenever you want to kick someone out for whatever reason, you always have an excuse.
And I think that is the case, but I do think this as well that. There's freedom of press in this country, but there's not freedom of access. Like a team doesn't have to give me access into their press box. I can write anything I want, but if they see me doing something like this and they have now something that they can say, oh, we can kick her out of the press box for doing that, this is a good excuse for them to have. There's that element of it too. It definitely is scary for reporters.
Yeah.
Well, there you go, folks. Someday, everything will be owned by the leagues, and then you'll understand everything about sports that the leagues want you to.
There you go.
I don't know. You say that, but then also I'm hopeful that in the age of the internet, all of a sudden new sports will arise that have new rules. Somebody could.
Well, that's a really good point. Like esports is a great example of that, or things like UFC, kind of up and coming sports that are making their own way, have to cater to a more digitally savvy audience and be more flexible. So yeah.
I mean, yeah, like it's fascinating to see like the itch that was scratched by, we'll say, early '80s professional wrestling. We wanted to see this savagery or whatever, but the only way for us to get it on primetime television was an almost admittedly fixed, choreographed thing. And so you saw a split off. You have what became the WWE. Is very focused on the storytelling and the soap opera-ness of it, and then you have UFC, which really, is. There's a bit of storytelling, but it's really about the full-on savagery and the realness of the combat in there.
And the one thing that at least Major League Baseball has been great about is we know that access to what we provide is what frustrates people. So they have been on the forefront of trying to put as many things out there as possible and say, you know what, we will make all of our games that we can available, and making it very clear that it's the local station that will let me show you that, not Major League Baseball. And so, it's kind of a double-edged sword. They would like to control the message, but then make you feel like you've got access to all the message at the same time.
But before we move on, I would love to get X's take on this. Like, do you feel like we're a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, or never going to be able to get truly in the sports world to the ability to just follow whatever thing we want on our mobile phone at any time? Or do you feel like there's too many?
I think we're about 2 years away. I really don't think we're that far away. I really do, because their walls are coming down. And there's this cable company in Canada, called Rogers Sportsnet, which you've heard about before probably, and they actually for the first time put out their local package, or the Game Center package, which is the package that you can get the entire league, which, like Tom said, usually will not have your local game on it because that is a local. And they put it out. They said, you know what, we're going to give you your local game. So it was interesting that one of the cable companies actually broke down that wall this past season, and once that seems to go, I think, so will go the rest of Canada, and eventually, you would think down here that would happen too. I don't think we're that far away, because once that little bit of, old school thinking goes away, then I mean, sports are perfect for streaming media. They're perfect. Well,
and plus they not only that, but they're perfect for quantifying every single, like you say, every single hit, every single goal, every single shot. It's made for the computer age, and that's interesting that you feel like something will crumble and then everything else will fall down like dominoes.
Hey, Brian, I can watch pretty much everying that I was watching before I canceled DirecTV.
That is
somehow over the internet.
That's
right. Legally too. Not VPNing or anything.
Dude, that's great.
You know what though? We here at Cordkillers, we don't want to have fantasy band paying us the money. We don't want walls up. We don't want to put digital locks on our content, and that's why we go on the value for value model. You tell us how much we're worth. Are you willing to support Cordkillers?
Heck yeah, man. I'll tell you who is. 2074, the raddest bastards this side of Oz. That's their gang name. We're raddest bastards on this side of Oz. Have decided to help keep us loud, live, and independent, bringing you unbiased news about the cord cutting revolution. We absolutely adore every single one of you guys. If I'm not mistaken, Eck is one of them. Thank you personally, Eck.
No, absolutely.
You're OG when it comes to supporting this show. We are getting a few more emails of people asking us if they can support us directly. I think we mentioned last week, if you have some meagrams about using the Patreon or an ongoing service, you can, of course, send PayPal to brian@schwood.com or feedback@Daily Tech News Show. Just make sure to give the same amount to both of us because we work equally hard on it. And by the way,
true.
By equally hard, I mean Tom works much harder than I do.
That's not true. And by unbiased, we mean unbiased by other concerns. We're totally biased.
We're biased as hell.
Yeah. I'll show you in the signals intelligence. So Netflix had its earnings this week, and the big surprise was that subscriptions in the United States grew, but a lot slower than even Netflix expected. Netflix had said, we think we'll get 1.15 million new subscribers in this quarter, and instead they got 880,000. Now here's where it gets interesting. They attributed the slowing down of the U.S. growth, which, by the way, wasn't matched internationally. Internationally, they beat their own expectation. They grew by 2.74 million. They only thought they were going to grow internationally by 2.5 million. They said the slow U.S. growth is involuntary churn. In other words, people got all these newfangled chip cards, Brian. And when they got those new chip cards, they got kicked out of Netflix and paying Netflix. And they haven't gone back in and resubscribed with the new cards. It's all the cards' fault, Brian. Actually, that's not what they said. They said due in part to chip cards.
Yes, and to be honest, I think it's not as outrageous an excuse as you might imagine. For example, we here for months have been reminding people to check your cards on Patreon because we do lose, as there is a certain amount of involuntary churn as people get new cards with new numbers and then it doesn't update, and you don't think about it in terms of like, oh, I didn't notice that this month I didn't get charged for that thing. What it really speaks to is let's say they're 100% right. What does that say in terms of Netflix's must-have popularity with these people? Because that means that they somehow had a lapsed subscription and never got around to noticing, either because they didn't go to Netflix or because they went there and were like, oh, I'll get around to signing up again some other time.
Yeah. It's just the dumbest thing I've heard, said Wedbush securities analyst Michael Pachter.
Well, I didn't get out much.
Lots of other people expressing the same thing. And Brian's right. It kind of doesn't matter if Netflix is trying to fudge the truth or not about the chip cards. I think it's BS because when I got my new chip card, my number didn't change, and most people's numbers don't change. But even if the involuntary churn is from chips or not from chips, it implies a bigger problem, which is people didn't notice that their Netflix subscription lapsed, or if they did, they didn't bother to go and update it and get it going again.
I mean, what about Amazon Prime in this whole thing? I mean, that's only American, right? I mean, for the most part. So
No,
that's
it's worldwide.
okay. Because I know in Canada they can't get it, from what I understand.
Get it
they
in the
don't.
UK and a few other places.
Yeah. So I mean, to me, I wonder. To me, that if I'm not going to get Netflix, it's because I'm really liking what I'm getting on Amazon Prime, which is much stronger competitor than it's ever been before, I think.
Yeah, and you're right that it definitely isn't in all the same markets as Netflix internationally, and its strongest place is here in the U.S. And actually, now that I think about it, the U.K. one may not include the video. It may just be thinking of Amazon Prime, the shipping. So it's a fair point, and it's certainly a point that Netflix wouldn't want to talk about, which is, we think we're getting increased pressure from all these other subscription services and over-the-top services.
Yeah, and for the record also, just to keep it in perspective, we are talking about a difference in increase of what, 12% off of expectations?
We've seen 2 straight quarters of Netflix growing in the U.S. for less than 1 million. Now, granted, last quarter they said this is what we expect, but it is a drop-off of previous growth. So we have now seen 2 slower growth quarters in the U.S. for Netflix. Could be Netflix may be totally right. It may just be a blip, and they're going to surge back. They say they expect 1.65 million customers to be added in Q4 in the U.S. And if we see that, then yeah, this was just whatever, involuntary churn or whatever.
Well, keep in mind also, Netflix is going for a very specific niche in this. They're going for, we've got some fairly current movies. We have extremely high quality original programming. I don't know that we need that to be as ubiquitous as Microsoft. It's like if Netflix is hitting. I mean, here's my point. I
imagine Netflix shareholders feel differently. That's all.
Yeah, correct. I'm sure. Yeah, shareholders, they want unlimited whatever, all of it. But like Netflix is spending its investment in new programming will match how much market share they end up balancing out at. So if saturation point is a few percentage points lower than they had originally projected, I think we as consumers still get great content, and hopefully Netflix keeps keep doing the bold decisions they've been doing.
Well, the danger is they want to spend $5 billion next year on original content. If they don't hit their subscriber marks, they won't be getting enough money in order to do that, and we as consumers don't get the content we want.
Yeah, I'll make sure to cry them a river when they only spend $4.5 billion instead of the $5 billion.
They've been printing money for a long time, right? I mean, they've been printing money for a long time, and there has to be some degree of saturation to the kind of people who will buy Netflix too. I think that just has to exist. I mean, who doesn't know what Netflix is at this point?
I guess here's what I'm saying is Netflix is on, and as we've talked about the market for online video delivery, Netflix is the higher end. They're the BMWs, they're the Cadillacs, they're the premier experience, and you can't dominate the market. I mean, I guess Apple notwithstanding, but like in general, if you're going to be on the high end, there's sort of this lower bound below which it's difficult to break into and still maintain your high quality reputation.
Yeah, but the question isn't that. The question is, Netflix says we think we can. This is our target. This is what we need to do. This is the number of homes we think we reasonably can get into and grow into, and they missed that.
Yeah,
No, and usually companies are fairly conservative in those kinds of projections because they actually want to give something to beat their mark if they can. It has to be justifiable, but I mean,
do you think that this is a case of Netflix making any specific missteps, or do you think it's a case of them having to dial back some of the so-called irrational exuberance about the cord killing market?
I don't think it has to do with the cord killing market. I think Eck probably has the best theory there, which is they're just feeling the pinch from a lot of other competitors. And people back in the day were like, well, it's Netflix at $7 a month, and that's the only choice I have for a digital over-the-top streaming. And now they have to pay $10 a month, and there's lots of choices for over-the-top streaming. And so they may say, you know what, I'm going to go with HBO Now. That's $15 a month, but talk about your Cadillac thing. Netflix looks like Subaru next to HBO. I'm going to get HBO. Or Hulu, they didn't have their ad free during this quarter that we're talking about, but Hulu was continuing to add originals. And,
that's actually a really good point. That could be, if they're joining together like a Voltron of taking down Netflix just by sheer competition, I could totally see that because there are a lot of really great legitimate choices, alternatives.
Well, they've kind of gotten nichey, haven't they? I mean, Netflix in a way is for old television shows. That's what we watch, and here kids, our kids watch Friends. Right now, my daughter's going on a Friends binge. She's watching Friends all the time. I haven't opened Netflix for a long time, but Amazon's for like newer television. Hulu's for newer television, and I think that might play into it as well. Netflix sort of is falling into that niche.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because Netflix is whatever you watch on it. I would say Netflix is for originals because that's what I watch most of the time.
I have it on good authority. I have 3 independent sources that have confirmed that Netflix is for Pokemon. So let's just make that very, very clear.
And that's actually one of the geniuses of Netflix is it can be for whatever.
Right.
But if you have that perception of it as being for old TV shows and you decide you don't care much about old TV shows and you haven't explored House of Cards or Narcos or Deadline or any of those other things, you just might let it lapse if the credit card went bad and said, I haven't opened it in a while anyway.
Well, especially knowing that it's still going to be there. Like there's something, that is the side effect of, cable companies. They embroil you in these multi-year contracts where you're stuck in the same reason that we hate our mobile providers. But absent that, we can all praise the fact that Netflix allows you to easily sign up and easily cancel. Side effect of that is maybe you go a few months without being signed up, knowing that you can easily sign up and or cancel.
43 million subs is what they have now. That is comparable to Encore or what Current TV had back in 2013. It's a mid-level cable network.
Wow,
that is amazing.
I feel like somebody just pulled off the Netflix's new clothes. I thought the number was so much bigger because I remember we were talking about as much as a third of all internet traffic was Netflix streaming at any given time.
Well, yeah, but that's bits, not people.
Okay. No, you're right. You're right. Wow.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of gear, which we weren't, let's gear up.
I mean, we were once you pointed out that we weren't talking about gear. It was a natural segue, Tom.
Thank you.
Your streak remains unbroken.
This is the equipment you use to watch all those bits that we're talking about. And Xiaomi is a Chinese company. You may have heard of them. They're considered the Apple of China sometimes. They sell smartphones at affordable rates that are highly sought after because of the design and because of their customized Android interface. They do a lot more than just smartphones. They also do a TV streaming box similar to a Roku, and they do TVs. And they just announced a 60-inch 4K TV called the Mi TV 3. It sells for about the equivalent of $786 US, 4,999 RMB. It comes with a separate bar, the Mi TV bar, that has the speakers, the processor, the storage, the RAM, the connecting boxes for HDMI and Ethernet and everything else, and then it attaches to the television with one cable. The interesting thing about this to me is that they're also selling it separately. So you don't have to buy Xiaomi's TV. You could take the TV you have, buy a Mi TV bar for about the equivalent of $157. And we shouldn't make too much about how that compares to US prices because it's an entirely different market, but it's 999 RMB. But you buy this device and it gives you the Mi TV OS and the experience. But when it expires, you can replace it and not have to replace the entire television.
This is the perfect answer. This is what you and I have both been wishing for separately. Tom, you get your easy all-in-one. You get your built-in pretty good smart TV experience. You get to have it upgraded later. Me, I'm just going to buy the big dumb monitor and have it be just beautiful and gorgeous in 4K. That's amazing, man.
And
cool,
it's more than just a
with
Roku, right? Because it's got speakers in it and it's got multiple inputs. So if you have a soundbar that has 4 HDMI inputs and your big problem isn't the processor in it, but the fact that you need more inputs and you don't want to have to deal with some janky HDMI switcher, maybe one comes out that has 8 inputs and you buy that.
Well, that's very cool with the HDMI inputs. I agree with you 100% there. I mean, I thought it was just a Roku box with a speaker for a second there, but yeah, this is. I mean, the inputs, that's a huge problem. I've had to buy an entire system for more inputs.
It's basically the entire television internals except for the display part. It says your television's just going to be a dumb monitor now, and you can replace all of the other parts of it. And unfortunately, it's only for China right now. But Samsung has tried a similar thing where you plugged it into the back of the box. It wasn't quite all of this. It certainly wasn't something with speakers in it, but it was kind of the same idea of replacing the internals. But it is a bit of a step up from just Fire TV sticks or Roku sticks.
Yeah. No, I think it's a fantastic idea. I think that I want to see more American alternatives embrace this. Also, holy cow, a 4K display, 60 inches for less than $800 American. Maybe it's time for somebody, to maybe spend some of his hard-earned Cordkillers cash on, maybe an upgrade to a monitor.
Do you think you can go in gray market?
Well, I don't even know about that. I mean, I'd have to see what the reviews are, but maybe I've been tuned out on the entire 4K thing until this moment, until I saw the possibility that there's a decent 4K display, 60 inches. I've described this before. I'm sitting here in the studio. I'm looking at no fewer than 7 monitors right now simultaneously, and the idea of consolidating them and having just that kind of real estate all on one screen is highly, highly enticing. So if anyone has advice as to what 4K displays I should look at in the 50 to 60 inch range, hit me up at cordkillers@gmail.com.
Yeah, I'm curious if anyone could come out with this independent of television. I feel like for the United States, it'd have to be somebody like Vizio, who is targeted towards the affordable television market, but with good quality type TVs. And then they would come out with this bar. But I don't see Roku adding speakers and doing a slightly more expensive version of the Roku. But I don't know. They just came out with the 4K thing. Could be wrong about that.
Isn't this the perfect Apple product? I mean, this feels like an Apple product to me.
The Apple TV.
Every which way, It feels like they're so, they don't need to make a monitor because that's what they don't want to make. They don't want to get into building monitors because the profit is so low on the monitor part of the television. But this feels like a perfect Apple product to me.
Yeah. You could take those speakers out of the old Apple Hi-Fi, and just stick them in the Apple TV. All right, well, let's take a break and tell you folks, we do all kinds of things to support ourselves, including Cordkillers, and we love that you guys can support us. But maybe you can't consistently support Cordkillers, or maybe you're just looking for something to read. I got books, TomMerrittBooks.com. Citadel 32, there's a guy up on the moon wondering, I wonder if people are still alive down on Earth because there was an apocalypse down there. And then there's people on Earth going, I wonder if there's still people on the moon. I heard a legend about people on the moon. And that's pretty much the story. Citadel 32, TomMerrittBooks.com.
I think you're selling it a little bit short, but meanwhile, make sure to go to TomMerrittBooks.com.
That doesn't sound like a good book to you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it seems like maybe there should be a conflict, or maybe the two sides should meet each other, or maybe some kind of interesting...
I don't want spoilers, man. Jeez.
Okay, I mean, it's all speculation on my part. No spoilers. I'll save it for spoiler in time, man. In the meantime...
Yeah, so anyway, if you like post-apocalyptic worlds... I hadn't read Canticle for Leibowitz when I wrote it, but it's a little bit of Canticle for Leibowitz meets The Moon is a Harsh Mistress.
Dude, loved both of those stories, and I think that means it's time for us to move on to the front line.
It sure does.
Frontlines.
Hey guys, Recode has sources who say that YouTube will announce some original programming at an event Wednesday at YouTube Space LA, where BT Dubs, don't know if you heard, Tom's wife works. The sources say the content will be available as part of a subscription program that also removes ads. This is different than YouTube gaming sponsorships that they just launched, which lets you support gamers for $3.99 a month and get access to exclusive chat perks, but does not remove ads. So is it... And again, not that you have any inside information on this, Tom, or if you do, feel free not to answer the question on this. Seems to me that in a world where even Hulu is able to offer a Prime thing to remove ads, in a world where YouTube is dealing with AdBlock Pro, removing the pre-roll and post-roll ads and so on, seems to me like a YouTube free or an ad-free YouTube experience would be pretty freaking dope.
Oh yeah, no, we know there's an ad-free YouTube experience coming. That's not the news here. The news here is that YouTube originals, which are directly funded high-quality productions paid for by YouTube, would only be available if you pay for the ad-free tier here. That's what is supposedly going to be announced Wednesday. And I'll be honest, when this story broke, I said, Recode's saying there's an event at your workplace on Wednesday. I'm not even going to look at you now. And Eileen was just like, I'm not talking to you. And that is not her saying anything is happening. But this is one of those few times where the news about YouTube, we joke a lot, oh, my wife works at YouTube. This is one of the few times where she does know the actual answer to whether this story is true or not. And so I made sure that I didn't put her in a position where she would get herself in trouble. So I have no clues from her whatsoever whether this is true or not. And especially don't know if YouTube Originals would be stuck behind the paywall, which is that's like taking a page out of Vessel's playbook, essentially. It does make sense why YouTube Gaming doesn't remove the ads, because it would be too confusing to have one thing that removed ads in one part of YouTube but not in another.
Yeah, interesting.
All right, but where does that YouTube money go? Sure, some is used to pay the salary of my wife, but Forbes ranks the YouTube stars that earn the most money for the year ending June. Number 1, PewDiePie earned $12 million. Gamer KSI made $4.5 million. Comedy troupe Smosh and the Fine Brothers, both teams, made $8.5 million. So I guess that's $4.25 million each because they're both duos. Musician Lindsey Sterling took in $6 million. Fashion vlogger Michelle Phan earned $3 million. The amounts for all of these are income they generated in total, not just what they made from their YouTube rev share.
Were you able to? I glanced through and I wasn't able to find anything specifically about how they assessed these numbers. Like, did they have an audit of some variety? Or
no, they said they looked at IMDb, they looked at estimated traffic. I
guess that makes me even more suspicious, because you can, for example, if you go to Social Blade, you can see how well the Scam School channel does, but Scam School is done in conjunction with Discovery Digital, and I get paid a flat, a amount per our negotiated contract. So it's not necessarily what I make, but then separate from that,
Forbes does this for a living. Okay, if you want to question whether Forbes is any good at estimating these numbers, that's cool. But I actually think of what Forbes does, estimating revenue amounts is probably one of the things they do well.
Yeah, okay. I just don't know how. Okay, right. The NBC Universal announced a service called CISO. I'm sorry. I was just gonna say like
I was going to want to talk about wow, that's a lot of money for YouTubers to make, not question the whole validity of the story. So
I actually was going to go the other way, Tom. I don't think it's a lot of money for them to make.
I agree.
I really don't. I think that because I mean, how many billions of dollars is YouTube as a business? I'm thinking about the NHL is a $4 billion business, and there's several players that make $10 million a year. I'm just wondering, what the $1 billion business is. How many billions YouTube brings in? I don't know, but I'm sure it's more than the NHL. So, yeah, there's only one over $10 million player.
Yeah, and I don't know how they would track down, there's personal appearance fees. There's, if they run any kind of commercial business, I don't see how they would be able to know how much of that is going on behind the scenes, as far as, if Michelle Phan, sells cosmetics or whatever. I mean, that, I just don't know. I would just like to know more. This isn't me trying to doubt their methodology or whatever. I would just love it if there was, if I knew more.
PewDiePie has never come out and said, oh, no, that number is inaccurate. PewDiePie has come out and said, listen, guys, I make a lot of money. I'm sorry.
Shouldn't be sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, because people say you're making too much money. And he's
that's
I'm sorry, I make it. So.
No, but they say athletes are making too much money, but the bottom line is they're making that much money because of a demand. There's a demand there, and he's creating more money than he's making for YouTube. So.
Yeah. Anyway, NBC Universal announced a video service called CISO last week. In the U.S., for $3.99 a month, you can watch old U.S. and British comedies, episodes of NBC's late-night shows, current episodes of NBC comedies, and more than 20 original series. One of the originals is Harmon Quest, combining live action and animation. 10 to 15% of the content will be available for free. Launches in beta in December and in full in January. You can sign up to be notified at beta.ciso.com. That's SEESO. And I feel like I feel like you planted that just for me, Tom Merritt, because I'm a huge fan of the Dungeons and Dragons playing they do on Harmontown.
I certainly had a choice between two things that sounded at all interesting. One being the UCB show from the creators of the Upright Citizens Brigade, Amy Poehler, Matt Walsh, Ian Roberts, and Matt Besser, or Harmon Quest, and definitely picked Harmon Quest because of you.
Yeah. It's a running gag on Harmontown that every time they go to play a little bit of a role-playing game, that Spencer Crittenden, their game master, shouts out repeatedly that they are contractually obligated to play no more than 10 minutes of any role-playing game in any other venue so that they can save the good stuff for Harmon Quest.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, though. Like, would you pay $4 a month just to see Harmon Quest?
Not at all, which is a real problem because also,
I mean, they have the back catalog of Monty Python too, though.
I might
and
pay
the UK Office.
I might pay a $4 day pass to
and
run
current
around.
episodes of Saturday Night Live. It's a lot of weird things all thrown together because comedy.
I mean,
It's all things you can find on YouTube. Speaking of which, that's the problem.
I'll say that I actually saw the list of originals and I thought it was really interesting. I actually think I want to try it out.
All right.
Good.
I'm going to try it out. So, boom.
You can expense that.
Yes.
yes. We'll reimburse you.
Let us know. Well, and like you said, it doesn't launch in beta till December and not in full until January. So maybe it'll become more clear. It just seems weird that in this world we're like, oh yeah, CBS All Access makes perfect sense to me. Give me everything from CBS for $6-7 a month. For NBC to go, we're just going to do the comedies. And even though you can get the comedies other places, like X said, like some on YouTube, some on Hulu, I don't know, it's just weird. Have to be about the originals. Let the game of whack-a-mole begin. The BBC told Torrent Freak it is beginning to actively block IP addresses from known VPN services in order to combat out-of-country viewing by non-subjects of the Queen. While the BBC says it is not blocking VPNs of schools or corporate users in the UK, it will block, whether it means to or not, the legitimate home users who happen to use the wrong VPN for their home security.
Or maybe, now here's a question. Like, let's say you are a person who's paid your license fee and you live normally in the UK, but you happen to be in France at the moment and you use a VPN to torrent or to tunnel back home. It seems like you would be entitled to watch that regardless of where you are, but I guess they'll
no. Yeah, same with Hulu, man. When I've been overseas and tried to use Hulu, even with a VPN, it won't work.
You know what's fascinating about this is BBC even mentioning VPNs. And because really what I've always found is that they didn't touch VPNs because by even mentioning VPNs, people are like, wait a second, I can do that? And they just opened up a whole can of worms to people who are going to try to figure out what a VPN is.
No, that's a good point. I think it says more about the fact that that VPNs are so ubiquitous. It's sort of like a victory announcement where it's like, yes, we get it. You all know how to use VPNs now. It's like for the longest time, I'm sure the MPAA didn't even want to recognize BitTorrent.
Do y'all remember that story on Cordkillers a few weeks back about the BBC launching a U.S. service that would supply you with television shows that are otherwise unaired in the United States from BBC back home?
I've never heard of it, but I look forward to checking out this program. Cordkillers, you say it is?
No, that's my conspiracy theory, and I don't even think it's much of a conspiracy, is if we're going to market a service in the United States whose principal value is you can watch things that are otherwise only available in the UK, they probably want to crack down on people who are watching things that are otherwise only available in the UK.
Which, to be honest, I'm not even that upset about. Like, black markets only exist where markets are being underserved. And if they can serve a market in a good way, then so much the better. Hey, man, Comcast has begun enforcing its long unenforced 300 gigabyte cap that still exists in a few of its markets, mostly in the central and southern states of the United States. People who hit the cap will be offered the choice to pay $10 a month to get 50 additional gigabytes or $30 for unlimited data use. For reference, a 75 megabit plan in Florida costs $80 a month with a 300 gigabyte cap. A triple play bundle, including TV and phone, costs $99 a month.
And the other things I'll add here is that some independent studies have shown that there's a 90% profit margin on internet connections and that usage-based pricing like this doesn't relieve congestion.
Wait, hold on. This just in. Tom Merritt suggesting that perhaps Comcast, not the most popular fair company on the planet. For breaking responses, we go to Eck. What do you say, sir?
I have no comment on this matter. None whatsoever.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, what the thing is, like, okay, so you spend $110 a month for internet to get unlimited at 75 megabits per second. What's wrong with that? Oh, wait a minute. I could spend $99 a month and get cable TV instead. Well, this is definitely a competitive move. Comcast saying, we'd really like to get your money for our cable service instead of using your internet, so we will use a cap to nudge you towards paying for our cable TV service instead of using your internet to watch television. And I think both these stories, the VPN and this one, are signs that people are starting to take seriously the competitive pressure of cord cutting.
Well, and plus also, here's the part that's not going to be popular is let's say they now announce, yeah, you have a choice. You can either for $99 watch your TV using the cable system, or for $30 more, you could watch it using just the internet. I'm sorry, I would gladly pay $30 more because it is a superior experience. It is better in every possible way. If let's say absent of what I used to be paying, if you say to me, 2 plans I have for you. For internet daily usage, you'll be the same on both. But if you want to watch video over the internet, it's $30 more. Otherwise, you could save $30 if you use a channel guide thing. It's called a cable box. It's kind of a complicated scheme. It's going to be a little weird for you to figure out. I'll be all like, no, I'll just pay the $30. Just let me watch what I want when I want.
By the time you hear this, you likely will have already seen the new Star Wars The Force Awakens trailer that aired during Monday Night Football on ESPN in the U.S. Tickets are scheduled to go on sale in the U.S. as soon as the trailer airs. Although, Brian, you were mentioning before the show, sites in the UK trying to sell Star Wars tickets are already getting flooded and going down. Dude,
they're getting shut down. I don't mean to get too inside baseball with the movie draft, but Justin downstairs, who will be joining us for Night Attack here shortly, is just shaking his head, announcing like, "It's over, Brian. You won. Brian won the movie draft, and he's gonna win it before the movie even comes out." So I don't know. We'll see. It'd be great if they broke some records.
What about this idea of ticket sales? Putting the Star Wars Force Awakens trailer on your sports property, ABC Disney, is a stroke of genius, right? It gets people to go watch football when maybe they otherwise wouldn't, and maybe rekindle their love of Monday Night Football.
And then start gambling.
Move.
And then start gambling, Tom. And from there they can...
Right? And then all of a sudden the NFL is no longer on ESPN. Wait a minute, bad idea. Disney.
Also, wait, the movie draft is a fantasy sports league. What have we done?
Oh, no.
That's right. One of you are playing BB-8, or Pumpkin BB-8, as I like to call it. No, you're right. This is really smart. I mean, the Monday Night Football happens to be the Philadelphia Eagles, so everyone around here is kind of going crazy about this idea already, and they're all fired up. They get to watch the Star Wars preview, and they get to watch Eagles lose all at once. So it's really exciting.
The horrible idea is to have tickets go on sale at an indeterminate point at which some trailer shows like even they don't know when the trailer will actually show, because we don't know when halftime will actually occur because it's a football game.
It's just going to make people like us just say, you know what? Forget it. I'm gonna wait. You know, it's kind of like the new iPhone. I can wait a couple months, can I? I mean, we all want to see Star Wars right away. So, man, talk about BitTorrent. Anyway, continue.
Let's move on to what's under surveillance.
Heck yes.
Under surveillance.
Ryan, a new teaser came out for Netflix's A Very Murray Christmas, a Christmas variety show hosted by Bill Murray, featuring Miley Cyrus, George Clooney, Michael Cera, Amy Poehler, Paul Schaefer, Jason Schwartzman, Miley Cyrus, Chris Rock, Maya Rudolph, David Johnson, Dmitry Dimitrov, Julia White, Jenny Lewis, Frederick Mullen, Rashida Jones, and more.
I mean, I just wish that they could get some talented people on there, or at least some famous ones. And I wish that it was with a personality that, would be a slam dunk that, maybe was associated with another Christmassy movie that was well beloved for over 20 years. Let me know if that ever happens, Tom.
It's happening on Netflix this holiday season, Brian.
Yeah, right on, man.
Actually, I'm really looking forward to this. I love myself Christmas variety show. I loved Colbert's, this goofy thing that he did a few years ago. Bill Murray hosting, no brainer, like you said, and a cast of thousands. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Hey, man, let's talk to Eck first. What have you been watching over the last week?
All right, I got into Red Oaks, the Amazon show, because it was told to me that I should. It was right on my Amazon Fire right there. It's probably everybody's on theirs. And I love this show. I mean, I don't know if you guys have talked about it yet, but I really like it. Yesterday we binge watched all of it until the last 2 episodes we're going to watch tonight. But It's really good. Also, it's 1985, New Jersey. I grew up in a Jewish town. Like, it's a Jewish country club. It's very much my youth because it was in 11th grade in 1985. So, yeah, it's perfect for me. That I've been really into that one. I've been also listening to this musical called Hamilton nonstop.
Oh wait, that's the live stage show on Broadway that people are
Yep.
going absolutely bonkers for, saying it's like the best thing ever.
It is absolutely brilliant. I mean, I'm on a history kick, maybe because I'm 47 and suddenly history matters to me a lot for some reason. Because my wife and I are watching Ken Burns documentaries left and right. But this Hamilton, it's hip hop. It's basically the guy who wrote it. His theory is that hip hop would have been the music of the founding fathers. That they were rebels, and this is the kind of stuff they would have liked. So it is so informative. I've learned more things about Alexander Hamilton that I just like. For example, did you know he was from St. Croix? I mean, I never knew that. Hamilton, there's a crazy amount of stories, and it's all very true. It's based on a biography, and it is brilliant. I mean, I definitely recommend listening to it, even if you don't like hip hop and don't like musicals. I don't like either.
Even if you don't like America, even if you don't like the founding fathers, even if you
don't like federalism.
Yes.
Right, exactly. Also, Droid Tales. I like Droid Tales a lot. Have you guys been talking about that or watched it at all? Droid Tales.
No.
This is I think done by the Lego Movie people. It's a Star Wars thing where C-3PO and is basically telling stories of the original Star Wars. It's really fascinating the way it's done. It's hilarious too. It's really funny. So
Right
and then
on.
the Muppets. I like Muppets. I've been watching Muppets.
Yeah, I've been watching the Muppets too, and it's good enough to keep me watching. I'm
Yeah.
not raving about it, and I'm certainly not trying to convince anyone that's not watching it to watch it.
Yeah.
It's mostly a nostalgia play for me at this point.
I agree. I think that's what it is, but it's better than it could have been. It feels like it's not as good as maybe the movie that, came out a few years ago, which was really awesome, but it's definitely better than I thought it would be.
I've also been watching The Last Man on Earth, which is hilarious. Once Upon a Time. We'll talk about Leftovers. We both, Brian and I, watched Beast of No Nation, the Netflix original movie with Idris Elba. The Shield, obviously. Fargo. Star Wars Rebels, opening up to great reviews. And the last episode had some crossovers with Clone Wars series that I thought were fantastic. Been keeping up on MLB and the Rugby World Cup, just using legitimate cord-cutting means, and it's fine. It works great. I don't know.
But that's so amazing. Like what would have been a headline on this show 4 years ago is now a footnote. By the way, literally everything I want to watch, I can watch legally.
Yeah, I don't have to put little parentheses saying like, no, you could get this from a legitimate cord-cutting symbol in my list anymore, because that's the only way I get it. It's Hulu, Netflix, MLB.com, Sling TV, PlayStation View. I mean, it's all available out there.
Yeah. All those things you mentioned. The only thing, Fargo. Did you watch Fargo episode 1, season 2?
Yes, I did.
Okay, good. All right, so we'll talk about that in spoiler in time as well. And in fact, I'm not even going to spoil my opinions on all those because I have strong opinions about everything you mentioned, and we'll discuss it after we find out what's on the lookout.
Hey, yeah. So this week, I have a show that isn't a streaming service original, but I would only be able to watch it via a streaming service because it is an Australian show. And because in America it is on Pivot, which is like an extended cable channel, and it's called Please Like Me. It is usually with these shows that I talk about, I watch a couple of episodes to try and get an impression on it. I am like 20 episodes in. I'm really in love with this.
Wow.
It's about the main character here, Josh, who is a 20-something-year-old who is coming to terms with sort of realizing he is gay because his girlfriend dumps him and tells him he's gay, and a lot of the awkwardness that comes with just having relationships with the people in your life, and for a comedy, it's not gut busting funny. It's not. It's more realistic. I think that's something that is a real big charm point, is that it and the dialogue feel very real. Where that endears me more than it being fake and funny.
Yeah.
So that's called Please Like Me. Season 1 and 2 are on Hulu. That's 16 half hours, and then season 3 just started airing, which is how I found out about it on Pivot. But they had the first episode actually on of season 3 on YouTube right now. So
cool.
That's the Pivot channel.
All right, let's rip through some dispatches from the front then.
Yeah. Hey Tom, I don't recognize this first letter. Is this a late breaking edition that you put in there?
Nope, that's one that you put in earlier.
Maybe I don't remember putting the link in, but I guess we'll read it.
I put the link in there.
Oh, okay, all right.
Nick wrote in and said, "Here's a little insight into the Australian pay TV industry I got from my uncle, who is a major advertising executive. Foxtel, which is the only major nationwide traditional pay TV operator left solvent that has cable and satellite infrastructure, has, after 20 years of operation, a market share of around 30% of households in the country. That's way below what it is in the US. Netflix, on the other hand, has managed to sign up 9% of all households in Australia since its launch earlier this year. Stan, Presto, and QuickFlix, the 3 local Netflix clones, are struggling, however, with less than 3% of households combined, and they existed before Netflix. Since Foxtel took the drastic measure last year of dropping its minimum subscription fee per month to $25 in order to fight off the, at the time, unlaunched $12 a month Netflix, I'll be interested to see if they can hold on to their market share longer than the much more expensive U.S. cable and satellite companies. And I found a RoyMorgan.com article that bears out the numbers that Nick wrote in about. Netflix is off to a hot start in Australia.
Yeah, by the way, I apologize. I was tricked by that URL that you put in there. I thought
sorry
it was
about
a different
that.
thing. That's okay. Hey, William writes in and says, just a quick note, and by the way, William was not the only one. We had a few people write in on this. The newest version of Play On and Play Later deserves some airtime from you gentlemen. The UI has been completely changed and turned into a DVR-style interface. The system has a set-it-and-forget-it record style that will record new episodes when available and notification when available for new shows. Only just start messing with it, but he says it does look extremely promising. I'll tell you, I used Play On mainly in the days, spoiler alert, there used to be a time that I would get some content from gray market, possibly black market places, and used Play On to stream it to my Xbox. But I really haven't gone back to revisit Play On since those days, and I'd really like to do it because it's for all of your legally archived stuff. It's a fantastic way to access it through multiple formats.
Ak, have you ever messed with Play On?
I haven't, but I will say this, Tom, because of you, I got a TiVo. Went back to TiVo, and I am absolutely. My wife thinks it's the greatest thing ever because we were big TiVo people. She's loving this like no one's business. She's all about cord cutting now, and she never was. TiVo got her over the edge.
Nice. Kind of the same thing happened with Eileen. It was TiVo's the thing she goes to all the time. What's interesting about this, William was among several people who wrote in about this newest version of Play On, and some people are under the impression that the DVR function is new. They've had Play Later, the DVR function, since 2011, but it's just a brand new UI that makes it a lot easier to use, plugs into more sources and stuff like that. Jeremy, our boss in beautiful Norfolk, Virginia, says this week my wife Eileen and I moved into our new home. While setting up our entertainment center, she was confused as to why I was upset at all the cords I had to connect and hide throughout the living room. She asked, "Aren't you a cord killer? Why do you need all these cords?" I explained cord cutting was about not using cable anymore, and she responded, "Well, the show should be called Cable Cutters or Coax Killers then. Cord Killers is misleading."
No, for the record, I say she's right. I think. Look, you got to start somewhere. We're gonna cut this cord, but 10 years from now, we're gonna be all like, "Oh, we need wirelessly transduced electricity throughout the entire house. No more cords ever."
That is the future evolution of Cord Killers. We promise you, Eileen from Norfolk, Virginia, we will someday be talking about wireless transmission of video and electricity.
Look, one step at a time. I'm sorry, sweetheart. John writes in saying, all this talk about Hulu and VR is interesting. Don't get me wrong, my enjoyment with Hulu is back since the no commercials plan. But how can they figure out VR when they can't even send 5.1 surround sound audio? Come on, Hulu. Netflix does it. Amazon does it. iTunes Store has it. Vudu has it. Everyone has 5.1 or better surround sound encoded with their streaming content except Hulu, still stereo, like an old black and white movie. Racist. Guess is too technically complicated.
Should I give the smug response?
Yes, go.
which is like, well, I guess it's because the engineering teams from VR and the engineering teams from stereo and surround sound are entirely different people with entirely different expertises.
Yeah, but also, no, it's good. It's good that he's howling about it because that's the only way anything's going to change.
I'm guilty of doing exactly the same thing, John, which is like, I know they're different teams, but why didn't they prioritize this one that I can use right now in my living room instead of spending all those resources hiring those other guys who do VR? I get it. You'd think that 5.1 surround sound would be on the list, and I bet it is.
You know what? In their defense, if I had $1 million to spend, it would be on VR, not on 5.1 surround sound. That's where the investors are going to be happy.
If we could put a man on the moon.
Yeah, exactly.
Eric wrote in and said, since cutting the cord 4 years ago, I've kept my old DirecTV dish laying around, just knowing it had come up with a new use for it. Yesterday was that day. I stripped everything off of the dish, bolted it to the old front brake rotors I just took off my car, and slapped an old grate from a rusted out gas grill on it, painted everything with high temp grill paint, and now I have a new deck fire pit for the price of free. I'll likely get much more enjoyment out of the dish this way than I ever did when it was hooked up to DirecTV.
I absolutely love this. So a brake rotor, a satellite dish, grill, and the one thing I want to see roasting marshmallows around that thing because I assume the dish is not plastic because I definitely had a plastic dish back in the day.
I want to know if you can start a fire without anything at all, just by putting like a thing in the middle, because this is like a death ray, right? Because all the beams are being put right into, all the beams off that thing are going directly into the middle all the time.
You can cook a burger if you have 8 LNB, but if you only got a 4 LNB dish, you're just not going to build something up.
Noise blocks. Wow. Taking me back. That's awesome. Hey, man, thank you so much for joining us, Zach. Where can we see more of your beautiful, beautiful face?
Thanks so much for having me, guys. This is a fantastic show. I'm on HockeyBuzz.com. Hockey Buzzcast. Search for it on YouTube. It's on every day if you're interested in hockey news. We talk a lot about silly things, too. So that's 1 o'clock Eastern time. But thanks again, guys.
Absolutely. Go check it out. HockeyBuzz.com, folks. Even if you don't like hockey, you will after you visit HockeyBuzz.com.
That's right.
I mean, you'll get
Our
a buzz.
website is Cordkillers.com. Our email address is cordkillers@gmail.com. And we're live on DiamondClub.tv Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. We'll see you beautiful people next time.
Hey, guys. Tom and Brian here. We just wanted to say thank you to all of our $5 patrons who keep us loud, live, and independent. You guys make Cordkillers the production that it is.
Your name appears in the video credits and appears in our hearts. And if you'd like to become one of them or see who they are, you can go to patreon.com/Cordkillers.
You'll need to do more than just go there, though. You'll have to sign up and, pledge an amount. But
unless you just want to see who they are.
Well, I mean, you could gawk. That's a little creepy, isn't it?
If you want to be a gawker,
let's go.
It's up to you.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.